Headlines are screaming that Prime Minister Modi's name has appeared in the Jeffrey Epstein files. This isn't just a political rumor, it is a question of India's national dignity on the global stage. But while the media obsesses over the name, they are missing the motive. Why would a convicted American criminal mention the Indian Prime Minister to a Qatari official in 2017? Today, we don't just read the headlines, we decode the information warfare behind them. Let's separate the noise from the signal. Yesterday, the US Department of Justice released the final tranche of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein. Buried in 3 million pages was a single email sent by Epstein on July 6, 2017. In this email, he claims that Prime Minister Modi took advice and danced and sang in Israel for the benefit of the US president. He ends it by saying, "It worked." Now pause for a second. Visualize this. The Indian Prime Minister dancing and singing? The Ministry of External Affairs has officially called this trashy ruminations of a convicted criminal. And frankly, on the surface, the claim is absurd. But as a geopolitical analyst, my job isn't to tell you it's absurd. My job is to tell you why it was written. To understand this, we have to travel back in time. The date is July 2017. This was a watershed moment in Indian foreign policy. Prime Minister Modi had just become the first Indian premier to visit Israel. This was the famous de-hyphenation strategy, where India stopped balancing its relationship with Israel against its relationship with Palestine. It was a bold, risky move. At the same time, in the United States, Donald Trump had just entered the White House. The world order was shaking. Now look at the geography. This is crucial. Epstein wasn't writing this email to a friend. He was writing to an official in Qatar. Why Qatar and why in July 2017? If you look at the map of the Persian Gulf, you will see that in June 2017, just 1 month before this email, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and their allies had imposed a massive blockade on Qatar. Qatar was isolated. They were desperate for access to the Trump White House to save their regime. This is where the geography of desperation dictates politics. Epstein, a man who traded in influence and secrets, was trying to sell himself to the Qataris as a fixer. He was essentially saying to them, "Look, I know how to manipulate Donald Trump. Even the Indian Prime Minister used my methods." He was name-dropping. He was using the brand of a rising global leader, Modi, to close a business deal with a desperate Gulf monarchy. This wasn't an exposé on India. It was a sales pitch by a conman. But here is the twist, and you need to listen closely because this changes everything. While the email itself is trash, the use of the email is a weapon. Reports are surfacing that the version of the email being circulated by opposition figures in India might be different from the raw source text. The BJP has alleged that the phrase "took his advice," implying Modi took Epstein's advice, was edited in. Whether edited or not, ask yourself a harder question. Why are these files being released now? The US Department of Justice sat on these documents for years. They are releasing them in 2026. This brings us to the hypocrisy check. The United States often uses transparency as a strategic tool. When they want to pressure a country, leaks happen. When they want to protect their own, files disappear. Note that while they release this ridiculous claim about the Indian PM, the names of many high-profile US politicians and powerful CEOs are still redacted or protected under legal privileges. They throw mud at the leaders of the global south to keep the news cycle occupied, while the true power brokers in Washington and New York remain in the shadows. It is the classic double standard of Western intelligence agencies. Transparency for you, privacy for us. So what does this mean for New Delhi? Transitioning to the India lens, we must realize that as India grows, the attacks will become personal and more bizarre. In the past, attacks were about policy, Kashmir, nuclear tests, or economic tariffs. Today, we are in the era of reputational warfare. The mention of Prime Minister Modi in these files is not a coincidence of history, it is the price of relevance. When you are a nobody in geopolitics, nobody uses your name to impress a client. When you are a major pole of power, your name becomes currency. The strategic takeaway for India is clear. We need information sovereignty. India cannot rely on Western platforms or Western justice systems to clear its name. If this story teaches us anything, it is that narratives can be manufactured by criminals and amplified by algorithms. We saw this with the Soros controversy, we saw this with the Hindenburg report, and now we see it with the Epstein files. The pattern is identical. A Western source releases a damaging claim, and domestic actors in India amplify it without verification. India's policy stance must be one of aggressive denial and counter-narrative. The MEA's response, calling it trashy ruminations, was the correct diplomatic maneuver. You do not engage with the mud, you step over it. But going forward, Indian intelligence and media need to build their own credibility structures so that when a document dumps in Washington, New Delhi doesn't catch a cold. We need to be the ones defining the truth about our leaders, not a dead financier from New York. To summarize, the mention of Prime Minister Modi in the Epstein files appears to be nothing more than the boastful lies of a criminal trying to secure a deal with Qatar during a geopolitical crisis. It is a case study in how names are misused in the dark corridors of global power brokering. But it serves as a warning. As India rises, the attempts to drag it down will come from the unlikeliest of places. Now, I want to hear from you. Here is your question for the day. Considering the timeline we discussed, do you think the release of such sensitive US documents is purely judicial, or is there a geopolitical timing to it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I will see you in the next analysis.